I think about some of the things that people I know and love and respect have gone through, and they've created these lives that were sturdy, and they've built things. And was that delicious? No, it was hard work, it was backbreaking, it was probably scary and weird. But they did that so that I could have a delicious life, that I could have the opportunities and the professional and academic and life experience to say, it's not okay just to have a life you endure.
Welcome to Who's Missing, a podcast that gets you thinking about who's missing from your world, at work, and in life. Today, we're talking to Pamay Bassey. She's the Chief Learning and Diversity Officer at the Kraft Heinz Company, and she's the author of My 52 Weeks of Worship. I met her nearly a decade ago as a result of that book, and being where I was on my own spiritual journey, one that continues to this day. Along those lines, Pamay also has a TED Talk called Navigating Sacred Spaces. Academically, she has a bachelor's degree in symbolic systems with a concentration in AI. I mean, there's so much relevance here. From Stanford, and she's a first-generation Nigerian American. Simply put, Pamay is cool, you guys. And today, she joins us to discuss the power of being a lifelong learner and inserting joy into your day, even making it, and I quote, delicious. When I think of Pamay, the word that comes to mind is humor. Ah, what a word. And on that note, I'm Emily Drake, and this is Who's Missing.
It's been so long.
I know. And everything's changed. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I was just thinking, boy, we need to have a catch-up conversation about life, because all I see is kind of social.
Yeah.
And now I've, done my deletes and down off, like I'm not so active, but I just see snippets of your life, and I'm like, wow, I want to hear about your life.
This podcast was born. Did you ever have a podcast in your long history of doing amazing things?
I have not.
I've
thought about it.
Okay. Of course you have.
I just haven't. So I'd love to hear if you love it or what you think of the experience.
Well, the reason we started Who's Missing, it was a kernel of an idea maybe 5 years ago, but it was this idea of like, have you looked around and audited and just been intentional and thought about, right? Like, who's, on the iPhone, they have those 8, I think you get like 9 pieces of real estate at the top. You can pin a chat. Like if you were going to pin, it's like MySpace, right? Like your top friends. And you look at those friends and you're like, who's missing, right? And I thought about it too for, like who's missing at boardroom tables. We're having these rich conversations about disability being represented in the boardroom, et cetera. I was just thinking about like, who is Pamay to me and who would Pamay be to someone else? Like, why would someone pick you to be at their table, do you think?
One of the reasons I think someone might pick me to be at their table is because my life is a mosaic of experiences that seem like they may not fit together. Mm-hmm. Somehow I have chosen them, or they have chosen me. They've enriched my life. I've taken lessons from each area and I've put it into the other, and I've said, you know what, I'm just going to take it all and make sure it applies as I go forward. And I think people don't think they can have lives like that. And just to be entertaining when I talk about, for example, comedy to religion to finance to corporate to like, wait, you did what? And to be inspiring, like, oh, maybe I could. So I think people would invite me to their table because of my stories, the things I have accomplished even when I was like, why, how is this going to work? And because I want to know about them.
Yeah.
So that I can
co-sign on that.
Yeah. So that's what I think. And that question is very humbling because you don't always think about that. Like, oh, you just think about what am I doing? What can I do? But the fact that there are reasons why people would want you at their table, and what are they? I love that question.
It's also, I don't know if you'll relate to this, but it's like, taking up space and having that experience, right? Of, it's sort of on us to know what we bring, and feel good about that. I also feel like there's lots of space, everybody. Take it up. Let me see you. What, in this mosaic way of thinking, what's the last tile you've placed in the mosaic? The most recent tile, do you think? Well, in the mosaic of Pamay. Yeah, I know. Let's just get to it. I know what you're going to say.
One more thing I would add to your previous question is I'm a voracious learner. I'm going to learn my way through it. And I work for Kraft Heinz. Our purpose is let's make life delicious. So I would say delicious. How can I continue to make my own life delicious?
Yeah. Delicious is such a good word. Do you feel that having life be delicious is a right?
Delicious maybe goes above and beyond right to privilege.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think about some of the things that people I know and love and respect have gone through, and they've created these lives that were sturdy, and they've built things. And was that delicious? No, it was hard work, it was backbreaking, it was probably scary and weird. But they did that so that I could have a delicious life, that I could have the opportunities and the professional and academic and life experience to say, it's not okay just to have a life you endure. Make your life delicious. If not me, then who, right? Who's going to have a delicious life if I can't have one? If I can't muster up the courage to put the pieces together.
That's why I think delicious, it's sort of interesting. It smacks me in the same way passion smacks me. It's the same way that love, these feel like very human things that are not available to like, it doesn't feel like on offer.
But one of the things that I would say, and again, just hearkening back to this fact that I work for a food company, is I think it's the right of everyone to have delicious moments in their life. Even just breaking bread with a loved one, that could be delicious. It doesn't need to be an all-you-can-eat buffet. It could just be like, let's have some mac and cheese, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't need to be big delicious. It can just be small, intentional delicious.
I don't know if this is a sort of a trite question to ask, but if part of me really does want to know, like, what it's like to be a chief in an enormous company. I don't even know what that's like, so I could just full stop there.
So to answer the question, I think about it as my life. Leadership is interesting because when you lead others, it requires you to figure out how to deliver through your team, how to inspire yourself and inspire others, and how to look to the future and say, how can I remove obstacles and that sort of thing. So those are the things I continue to do when you say, what is it like to be a chief? Leadership it's a practice. It's every day waking up and trying to figure out how to be a leader where your teams are inspired to go do great things and to create lives for themselves. That's a big responsibility. It's about knowing my people and what is it that you're actually, like, what does your day look like? What are the challenges and joys that you're dealing with? And how can I help you navigate that plus this job? It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I was facilitating a retreat for some senior leaders a couple weeks ago. And the question I want to ask you, and I'm going to get to it, is like, what do you say to the people who are like, work is work. I'm not here to talk about my whatever that is about. Maybe it's a boundary, right? So I want to come back to that. But the context I want to offer is, as soon as someone in the room of 20 senior leaders opened up about personal experiences, including the death of his parents and cleaning out their house, it changed everything, and I've heard since then, it's like that, this particular experience was the best part of the retreat. So like, I know that, you know that. What do you say to people who might be like, that's not what I'm here to do?
Yeah.
Right?
Honestly, I say, okay. There's this thing that says, bring your whole self to work. Depending on what your life experience has been like, that could be a great, wonderful thing that breaks it open, or it can be like, it has not worked for me. It has backfired on me. It has not been something that has been useful for me, or I just don't want to. I think the best thing is to create an environment that people can share if they want to, and they can, to your example, experience what happens when I get to know you a little bit differently, and I work with you. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that about her. That changes how I understand her and it enriches our interaction. That can happen. But it's not mandatory. Mandatory sharing is not where we want to go.
What do you think? I know humor is sort of I don't know is humor important to you?
It's the core. It's the core of who I am.
Yeah.
I process the entire world through laughter. It's who I am.
So there's the answer, right? I was going to say, what role does humor play in connecting, in leadership? I mean, if it's so intrinsic to who you are, you may not even have your finger on it, but like, how does it inform your day and your life?
I mean, learning is not actually always easy or fun, right? Getting
Amen.
from, you've been through anything in life, you realize, okay, well, this lesson here is challenging. And that applies whether or not it is a life lesson or I got to figure out how to learn this thing so I can do my job, or I got to learn how to, it doesn't matter. Going from not knowing to knowing is humbling, it's difficult. Laughter just makes everything better. If I can laugh at myself as I'm bumbling my way down that path. One of the things about comedians that are so great is they tell stories and you recognize yourself in their stories. They're brave enough to say, this is where I was an idiot, or this is where, these are the things in my life that I've observed. And you're like, oh my gosh, how are you in my head? And so I think laughter helps you to understand life in a way that nothing else can. And it makes, to use depth and light, it makes things light at the right amount of time to give you fuel to walk through the difficult parts. Everyone wants to be entertained. It doesn't matter who you are. Oh, there's the laughter. Okay, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine.
For me, that is music. When I have days that are silent, it's usually, I'm very deep in myself and usually not doing too great. So I'm hearing like laughter is sort of a watch sign for you of like, I'm doing okay. What else do you have on your dossier that you sort of like tally, keep track of, just so you know you're maintaining integrity,
Yeah, music is also, I learned that during the pandemic. We were all like, okay, so what are the things?
What are the things?
The world is like a dumpster fire and there's got to be something. And we laugh, but now it's gotten to the point where it has to be intentional. What do I need in my life today to make sure that everything's all right? Music was one of them. Walking by the lake, so outdoors. I don't do so well in this winter time because I'm like, I need just to breathe the fresh air. When we couldn't do that, that felt awful. Reading and writing, which I just love. So there are just a few things, fresh cut flowers, just looking at your day and saying, what can I insert into this day to make sure it's a little piece of delight?
Pamay Bassey's choice for this week's Spotlight is Giving Grace. It's an initiative under the organization Remerge, and their efforts are geared towards single-parent families, persons experiencing homelessness, and the extremely poor. The goal is to ensure they can maintain a healthy, secure presence in the community in order to give them the best choice of success moving forward. You can learn more about all that they do at www.remerge.org/giving-grace. And now, back to the show. What is the through line? There's this lifelong learner through line. In other words, when you tell the story of you, and look, you've told it on a stage, right? You've got a TED Talk, you've got a book. These are things that are very concrete that really tell a story. Is there more that when people are like, make it make sense, Pamay, if anyone says that to you, has the gall, that you would say like, here's how I make sense of it. Yeah. Like, this is what I figured out.
It's funny that I should say, some people have said that to me, often in job interviews where they're like, so like, explain to me this, how did this, right? The through line is learning. But when I introduce myself, I say I'm a lifelong learner, loves laughter, words, big ideas, and serving my community. So if you look at all the things I've done, you'll see laughter, you'll see words, whether it's writing or it's speaking, you'll see learning, you'll see big ideas. I like to dream big and think, why couldn't I do this? And then my communities, the different levels, are important. That's a lot of rear view mirror. Like that phrase I came up with about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago in a leadership development program when they said, describe who you are without using your title. And I was like, okay, what are the pieces? But now, of course, leaving space for like something new to add to the list. Those are the things where I look at the choices that I've made. It's because I want to learn or laugh. I love the power of words. You know, I love my community. I want to make sure I do good things for it, and I dream big.
Do you talk about your experience in 52 Weeks of Worship, which I just want to say is a book I've read. It's the book that brought you into my consciousness. I just wonder how we invite that into this conversation around diversity and what makes it so hard to do.
Yeah.
Because it is an important part of like what people believe and think, but it still feels kind of untouchable to me. What do you make of that? And maybe share a little bit about your book too, if you don't mind. Yeah.
The one time in my life where I couldn't find laughter was after a very personally challenging year. My father was ill. He passed away in August of the year before I went on this 52-week journey, which I'll tell you about, which you already know, but I'll share. My grandmother passed away. Just before that, and a relationship that I thought at that point was notable ended in a betrayal. So it wasn't just like a breakup. And so I made a decision to spend a year visiting a different place of worship every week. So churches and mosques and synagogues and temples from the south side of Chicago to South Africa. And I had the benefit of being able to travel from Brooklyn to Brazil. At the time, it was a grief journey that I was trying to walk through, right? Mm-hmm. I was not thinking books, TED Talks, and that. I was just like, let me get out of bed in the morning. What is my life? What I didn't realize that I do now that I sit in the role that I have is that it was a foundation of an inclusion practice where what you need to do if you want to be an inclusive leader is you need to put yourself in other people's shoes. You need to practice constantly being in spaces that are different than yours, humbly and silently participating, listening, learning, and figuring out how to talk about things in a way that is respectful. So 2 things. One is, who are you and what do you believe? Because at that point I was like, I don't know what's going to get me through this. So I need to really look at what I say I believe and is it supposed to help me get through this? If not, then what's the point of that label?
Yeah.
And there's a whole world out here of people who are doing the same thing, just trying to get out of bed in the morning and raise their kids and, celebrate the good things and navigate the bad things. How are they doing it? What conclusions are they coming to? What communities are they building? How are they moving through life? And if they're doing it in a different way than I am, how can I respectfully say, oh, okay, Emily, you do it that way? I mean, barring the fact that you're not hurting anybody, okay. And I think the reason why it's difficult to talk about religion or faith in the workplace is because that takes an enormous amount of work to be able to hold tightly something where I say, I can tell you I believe it. I'm not going to not believe it because you believe something else. And I can talk about whatever you believe without thinking it's going to somehow negate my beliefs. It takes a lot to do that. And religion, for some reason, is much more personal because then we get into salvation and the way, like, this is the right way because this is going to happen because I believe this, and it just makes it very difficult. Whatever you believe, take the time to navigate those sacred spaces so you can find that for yourself, whatever it is. There's a place for everybody, which I think is the inclusion message. Whatever it is that whoever you are, whatever you're going through, believe or not believe, there is a community that can support you where you can exhale and feel like, this is my place. These are my people. And that's just a wonderful thing.
What do you make of this distinction that we love to make in the world of work? I suppose just the world of being alive, of like being an expert versus being a generalist, being a specialist, the however many hours you need to put into something to be good at it. What do you make of, and going back to, again, this permission slip of like, live your life the way you want to live it. How important is expertise? What do you make of that word? What do you think about it? How do you identify with it?
It's extremely important to put that much time and effort into a thing so that and a lot of it is just experience after experience and seeing case after case and after case and having that all in your brain and being able to say, based on the 49,000 things I have learned about this topic, I am looking at this current situation and here's what I think, right? I don't think that's something that can be kind of just minimized. Now, humility plus expertise is useful because the more you learn, the more you realize, so many people are practicing, physicians are practicing, what are they doing? They're saying, we've seen this 700,000 times, so I'm going to say this is this, and I'm going to make this choice, right? But they know they're still practicing. Lawyers are practicing. That word practice is used for a reason, because expertise doesn't mean somehow you are, there's nothing that you can learn about a thing, right? But you've learned a heck of a lot, and if you're humble about it, then you could say, and let me just see what else I can learn to make this conclusion about this particular issue. But I am not someone who's like, expertise, bah.
Right, like that I think it's important too. I tend to agree. I am so grateful for you, and I'm grateful that you are in the roles you're in life where people get a chance to see what the culmination of lifelong learning can look like, can sound like, right? Like, and to take the inspiration from you. So I'm very, very grateful that you were willing to, make some time to share with whomever listens to this. Is there anything else you want to lift up? Anything you're working on or anything you want people to know about?
I will say this. I'll just give you a little insight into the inner workings of Pamay. One of the things that drives me is that I love stories. I love a good story. And a lot of the times when I make choices about the next thing I want to do, it's because I'm like, ooh, that makes such a great story. That would make such a great story later, and then to look back and put it together with all the other things. I love other people's stories. And so I encourage people to reach out. If you don't have your own thing that's motivating you, find someone whose story you really love and get to know that story. Create your own stories, by all means. But if you need to just pick someone else's story and let that drive you for a while, do that. Yeah. I am sharing the 365 things I've learned from 365 Days of Learning on LinkedIn. If you want to follow me there, I would appreciate that. I figure I need to go back through them. I'll share them with other people. Learning your way through things is just a way to get through life and give yourself grace, understand everyone else is doing it, whether they're saying it or not, and gives you kind of some oxygen. I don't know why this is happening, but let me just see what I can learn about this, make through the day, and then tomorrow there'll be another lesson. And that's the way that I think, a powerful way to make it through any situation.
I like it. It feels real gentle to me. And I love it, right? Like this, not that it's easy, but it's gentle, okay? Yeah. We don't have to, life is not a blunt instrument. We can just, easy, right? A little bit of chill. Thank you so much for being here and for making me smile. And I'm real proud of you. It's one woman who's saying it, but I'm really proud of you.
Oh, it matters. And I think it's so great the way that we met. Really I was just telling one of my team members how we met. You tell your stories, and people out there are like people you don't even know. And what's great about you, you're like, hey, so I'm going to reach out to this lady. And then look at us, how many years later? So
I know.
I'm really proud of you too. I am.
Thank you.
So I've watched your journey as well.
Yeah, I have an 8-year-old in my life now. And Pamay, did you know that I love to play? I didn't know that. Yes. I didn't know that. And now I'm like, my partner's an improviser. He has a fantasy improv podcast, and he works in the gaming world. And, there's just like, I wouldn't identify as that, but I'm like, you know what? I'm really good at this.
I love that.
I really like it.
That's so great.
I love it.
So great.
So just the kids in our lives, it's just like, who knew?
I love it. I had no idea.
I do too.
And I don't know why I had no idea, but I really had no idea. I mean, I knew generally that kids were delightful. But nobody talks about the depth of delight. They only talk about the things that are hard. They talk about no sleep and crying. They don't talk about, oh my gosh, this beautiful baby.
It's the same with people who get divorced. They're like, oh, right? Or being a stepmom. They're like, let me give you the list of things that are going to be hard. And I'm like, let me give you another list.
Yeah.
Also, right? The both and.
It's annoying. It's a good question. It's a life question. Why do people give you the bad list and nobody gives you the good list?
as always, thank you so much for listening to Who's Missing. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. It only takes a few seconds and truly makes a huge difference. And if you want to hear from us more than just once a week, you can follow us on Instagram or check out our website where you can subscribe to our newsletter, read about our guests, check out a bunch of awesome resources, or send us a message if you have questions or comments. Feedback is welcome. Sounds great, right? Yeah, join us. What are you waiting for? Visit us at www.who'smissingpodcast.com or on IG at Who's Missing Podcast. Talk to you soon.